Welcome! Now before we continue, I'm going to pose a question. What level do you think the party will be at by the time I reach the final boss? Okay, now keep that answer to yourself, or if you're feeling really daring, put your answer in the comments below. So hopefully the title of this video is pretty self-explanatory, but today I'm going to be playing through Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but after each battle, the party drops a level, starting from 99. Now as you might expect, starting from 99 makes most of the early game very easy, especially since there are only 4 battles in Chapter 1, meaning it's going to take a while before things start getting difficult, but don't worry, it's inevitable. So I was caught off guard by Chapter 2, as going into this challenge I expected I'd end up around level 60, as with only 10 chapters and most of the required fights being only 1 or 2 enemies, I felt dropping 39 levels to be a pretty safe estimate, but I'd have to rethink that pretty quickly, as Chapter 2's early encounter with the Ardanian military dropped me 5 levels instantly. Now I should quickly mention the fact that unlike in Xenoblade Definitive Edition, where I can adjust my level at any time, in Xenoblade 2 I have to rest it in, so that's why any eagle-eyed viewers will notice that I'm still level 98 while fighting Brigid. But don't worry though, as I've been keeping track throughout. So with Chapter 2 clocking in at 11 battles, I'm already down to level 84, so it was at this point I decided to tweak the rules ever so slightly to make the challenge harder on myself. Originally I was going to have Rex be the one to lose levels, and keep our other party members at 99, but after some consideration I felt it just made more sense to keep everyone leveled the same. But little did I know, this would be a big mistake. Chapter 3 had 10 battles, meaning my original prediction of being level 60 was becoming less and less likely, as if the battles keep up at this pace, then we were looking at level 1 by the time we reached the final boss. And Chapter 4 didn't help this either, as after 23 battles, we were down to level 51, blowing my original prediction out the water. Now I could have skipped 2 of these battles by executing the speedrunner's factory skip to circumvent the 2 Turkin fights required to get through to the Giga Rosa arena, but I decided it made more sense to do a glitchless run of the game. Luckily though, Chapter 4 was the worst when it came to the number of battles, and we got a break with Chapter 5 as it only contained 4, tying it with Chapter 1, but unfortunately the break doesn't last long as it's during Chapter 6 where things start to get interesting. So everything proceeds as normal during Chapter 6, that is until halfway through after saving Pyra from Theosaur Palace. Now at this point there have been 11 battles, meaning the party's current level is standing at 36. However, we have now officially crossed the threshold of no longer being of a higher level than our opponent, making it so now EXP gains start to add a new factor into the mix. Concluding the battle with Torna at the end of Chapter 6 would normally mean we'd drop 3 levels, but because our level is so low that after beating Mikar, Akos and Petroka, we gain enough EXP to reach level 38, meaning that instead of dropping down to level 33, we get to keep an extra 2 levels, leaving us at 35 instead. Now with this curveball added to the mix, I wonder how people's guesses are holding up. Anyway, Chapter 7 was my most feared chapter, especially now as our opponents are only getting stronger, and fans of the game can probably guess why, as about halfway through the chapter, one of the fights involves fighting apparitions of the legendary hero Adam. Now what normally happens is if you don't defeat one quick enough, then 2 more spawn, so I was very concerned that if I wasn't strong enough, then I could potentially lose the challenge. Luckily though, as you can see, I didn't have any trouble. That was until the first Malus encounter on the cliffs of Moratha. Up until now my strategy had been sound, as I had been using the party loadout best suited to speedrunning the game, and this had been paying off, but the issue now was it didn't matter what I tried, Malus would always one-shot me due to Rex's low health. But after 30 minutes of repeated tries, I eventually managed to develop a strategy of letting the other party members attack first to draw aggro, and then spamming enough arts to take Malus down. But of course RNG played a big factor too, as Malus could still one-shot me at any moment. But the rest of Chapter 7 was a breeze, though this did lure me into a false sense of security for what was about to come. And starting Chapter 8 there was no trouble. We progress as normal and always choose Mithra, but it's not until the Horde of Guldo where I get a big level boost. As now I'm sure some people won't be happy about this, but I wasn't able to beat the fight on my first try, meaning I gained 2 levels from previous attempts, and another 2 on my successful attempt, jumping my level up from 36 to 40. But considering there are 8 of them, I decided to let this battle be the one exception to the rule, but to anyone who isn't happy with this, then I have a treat for you at the end of the video. Continuing on, we fight the Infernal Guldo, who at level 60 is almost double our level, and much like Malus, this enemy was able to take out Rex in one go, so after numerous attempts I started looking for a new strategy. Surprisingly, I found out Mithra was the best choice, coupled with the revival pod, as this gave Rex enough time to deal a lot of damage and trigger the second phase of the fight, which has us reunited with the party, and gives us enough of a chain attack gauge to be revived without the use of an item. Though this isn't the end of Chapter 8, as it decides to give us one last kick in the shins with the fight against the Underline Loyalists, dropping our level down from 33 to 28. However, this fight ends the chapter. Nearing the endgame now, Chapter 9 only has 2 battles, with the first what I'd considered the hardest of the run. Now I'll be honest, there's no heroic story to how I overcame the fight with Jin. I felt like I tried everything and nothing seemed to work. I'd even considered raising the other party members' levels, scaled up with when they first joined the party, but being so close to the end of the game, I just couldn't do something like that. So instead, I sat down for an hour and eventually RNG went in my favour and I beat Jin, because if there's one thing I do well, it's brute forcing my way through a problem. And the exact same thing happened with the Malthus. I even tried to perform that glitch where you can get him to drop down the hole he came from, but no luck. So I had to sit down for another 30 minutes until things finally went my way again. But that's it. So now at the final chapter, it's the moment you've all been waiting for. Starting at level 37 left me with a lot of anxiety, because I knew I was going to take one last big hit to my level before the final confrontation with Malus, that being in the dream sequence of fights against the other party members. And although I got enough EXP to move up to level 38, I still had to drop down to 34, meaning at the start of this video, if you guessed my final level would have been 34, then congratulations, you win the satisfaction of being superior to everyone who guessed wrong, including myself. So with the Artifice Ion being level 70, I expected this to be the toughest fight of them all. But actually, I did it on the first try. And honestly, it felt extremely anticlimactic. So what I did was, I went back and added up all of the required battles, and assuming my numbers were correct, there are a total of 98 in the game, which if you subtract from 99, leaves only level 1. So I came back to the fight with a party of all level 1s and I did it. Still, it took me about 50 tries to pull off, and perhaps would have been easier with the correct poppy loadout, but I'm still adamant about not playing Tiger Tiger. So with that said, if you like what I'm doing here, subscribe, and as always,